So finally, our last presentation for today, values of Euromaidan from comparative perspective. And my name is Sviatoslav Sviatnenko. I'm from National University Kyiv-Mohyla Academy from Department of Sociology. You can see my email, so you are free to contact me. Of course, a lot of scholars gave critical attention to values, but the theory I'm using was developed by Shalom Schwartz. I don't have enough time to go into details, but the main point that he aggregated values into more general values categories, as you can see on slide, and we can assess it during the surveys. Speaking about Euromaidan values, I should stress 3 points. First of all, people in Euromaidan in general did not value power, and that means that one's behavior oriented towards control over people and resources would possibly be rejected, and evidence we saw after countless attempts to disperse Maidan and after every attempt of Yanukovych to demonstrate his power just made people be more active in their protest, maybe be more angrily, and actually the usage of power was unacceptable for people of Maidan, and maybe it is also the reason why Euromaidan did not have such a leader, because simply people didn't accept anyone with power. And secondly, we can understand here what is actual revolution of dignity, and this construct of dignity consists of few values, as I think. It's first of all self-direction, meaning freedom and independence and curiosity. It's also benevolence, meaning loyalty, responsibility. It's also universalism, meaning wisdom, equality, peace, tolerance, unity, and other values. And of course, it's critical to understand what are the values of Euromaidan, because it's kind of a habitus of Euromaidan protesters, and this kind of collective identity which is manifested by the dominance values of security, stability, contrary to insignificance of power and insignificance of hedonism on Euromaidan. What's interesting about European values, that of course they are also diverse from different regions inside Europe. For example, for post-socialistic countries, the dominant value is conformity, while for Scandinavian countries, one is self-direction and maybe hedonism. But if comparing values of Euromaidan to Ukraine and to EU, values of Euromaidan significantly closer to values of citizens of EU than values of Ukrainians, and moreover, actual values of Euromaidan are more, let's say, European than actual values of EU citizens, because speaking about the myth of Euromaidan values, that was widely spoken on Maidan. Mostly it was connected to individualism, equality, respect for rights, and on Euromaidan actually these values of self-direction, universalism, benevolence, and stimulation are far more important than for citizens of EU itself. And I think that there's something that Euromaidan can give Europe, some sort of solidarity and unity based on shared values but not nominal characteristics. And another question here is whether we can call this revolution in Ukraine Euromaidan, or it is more appropriate to call it revolution of dignity. And based on above mentioned analysis of values, Ukraine can build civil society with high degree of altruism, involvement, engagement, solidarity, as well as strengthen Ukrainian identity. And also what's here important, that Ukraine shows high degree of tolerance and multiculturalism. Actually, I've spoken on Maidan with people from leftist Village-Man Party and asked them about attitude towards UNAUNSO and right-wing organizations. They said they had the same goals on Euromaidan, so why they would be in conflict, and they are brothers. And I've also spoken with people from private sector, and they answer about left ideology on Maidan was general similar, and one person from UNAUNSO said that of course left ideology is not acceptable on Euromaidan, especially considering Soviet past, but as long as they are together on Maidan fighting for the same, it doesn't really matters. And also what's important about the new forms of organization based on deeply rooted traditions, for example Sich, you can read an article about that, but it was more like a security organization, protected Ukrainian lands and rebelled against domination, and became a symbol of freedom-loving Ukrainian people, and altogether it can build strong Ukrainian identity or national idea. I guess I should also speak about Ukrainian-Russian differences, obviously, yeah. And a few days ago I saw sociological data about support of Putin in Russia, and after Crimean annexion it reached its peak of 83%, according to Levada Center data. So 5 out of 6 Russians strongly support policy of invasion, while Ukrainians obviously don't. And of course here is a media issue, but another explanation is that just Ukrainians and Russians are different, and here we can see the differences between Ukrainian and Russian identity. And just go briefly, some of characteristics of Ukrainian mentality is deep respect for individual dignity and rights, and Maidan frequently showed it. And while for Russia, for example, it's just political traditions of Russia place the Tsar only slightly below God, and the individuals count for nothing, and everything must be sacrificed to the general good, which is embodied in the Tsar, and etc. And another point that Ukrainians adore self-governance and political equality, starting with traditions of Kievan Rus and with Vyche, with Cossacks. And Ukrainians, of course, as it was also demonstrated on Maidan, close to nature, to the land, to turn them to take a special pride in the rich Ukrainian culture, folk culture, and its song and dance. And actually Euromaidan was frequently called at its beginning as a disco, but it's also a part of our identity. And of course more Ukrainians are more emotional, post-materialist, and more tolerant, because as I've said before, yeah. Going back to the question how to call this revolution, I analyzed more than 500 of posters people brought to Euromaidan, trying to make kind of taxonomy of values and attitudes. And what's I want to stress here is that actually pro-European posters, and you can see examples in Ukrainian or English, and that pro-European posters were presented on Maidan mainly during the first week in the end of November, before students were attacked by riot police. And after that night, dominant topics demands in discourse of Maidan shifted, and it were actually anti-Yanukovych and anti-police or anti-regime memos, but not a lot of pro-European. And I guess that actually Euromaidan ended that night, and the next stage that can be called actually revolution of dignity appeared. And of course here is something interesting in discourse too, that posters demonstrated orientation towards security and peace, universalism, fairness, equality, and freedom. Also, I should talk a little about the social structure of Maidan, and I divide Maidan into 3 groups that share different values. First of all, first group I called moralists, and it is characterized by the will for justice and goodness. They follow traditions, live in harmony with others and nature, in comparison to other groups. And power and hedonism are not so important for moralists. And the second group, individualist, they are the largest group on Euromaidan, and they want to have a high social status, prestige, control over others. And it's important for them to emphasize success by demonstrating competence and professionalism. And the last group, explorers, comparing to previous 2 groups, they have desire to be independent and unrestricted in their actions, as well as permanently discover something new and enjoy it. And they aren't, of course, conformists and don't appreciate security and tradition so much. And I guess explorers was ones who were in first row on Hrushevsko and further. So that's all. Thank you for your attention, and дякую. You are free to write me an email if you want to, so ask some questions. Yeah.